Hello everyone and welcome back to more Knowing Wheel, where today we're here with episode 64 of our weekly Formula 1 show. Yes, my voice has somewhat returned this week. We'll wait and see as to how things go. But of course, I'm joined by last week's host and always on here, member Jamie183. How are we doing, mate?
I'm very happy. I'm a bit disappointed to have been demoted from host after the midweek podcast.
I did offer.
True. Nah, I enjoyed stepping in, but I'm glad you're okay.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Why you started that with "I'm so happy"? And
I don't know why I did
I'm
that.
so sad.
Yeah, I never really think about what I'm saying on this podcast. If you couldn't tell,
we kind of did wonder. So, is anything that's made Jamie so happy this week, or is he just lying?
No, really. I mean, it's warm, I guess. In Manchester, that's quite hard to come by.
It is warm. It is warm. Very too warm, I think, is probably the expression we're going to use, aren't we, this week? So enjoy over the next hour or so, just Jamie and I both slowly melting. But yeah, of course, as always, though, if you're new around here as well and you're watching this on YouTube, wave hello to the camera, Jamie. Say hello. You know, if you want to go check this out on Spotify, if you still don't want to see my COVID face, definitely recommend going over and checking it out over there. Of course, down in the description as well will be links to the Clips channel. Now hopefully I'm feeling better soon. We're going to try and get more out over there. Bybit as well. You know, definitely would recommend going over and checking them out. F1 merch, Manscaped, everything there is all linked down in the description below. But of course, yeah, we did an Austrian GP weekend pre-show. Of course, now we're going to be back to one episode a week for the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to do a Hungarian Grand Prix pre-show. After, of course, we do the French GP pre-show, everything like that. Things get very, very complicated on the channel. But, of course, therefore, that meant there wasn't a huge amount of news to go through last week. It was basically anything that was announced Thursday, wasn't it, Jamie? And that was basically just the fact that the technical directive we spent half of last week's show talking about has now been delayed, because of course it is.
Yeah, I think... I mean, I never really think the teams like changing rules mid-season, so they've kind of done all they can to put it off as far as possible. But yes, the thing that I brought my knowledge towards on Thursday last week immediately got made obsolete, or at least pushed back a couple of weeks. So... yeah, the Belgian Grand Prix is when it's going to come into play now, which means that I'm going to be seeing a Lewis Hamilton win. Because it should favour Mercedes.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wait and see about that. I think when we kind of got told, weren't we, that this directive had been announced, we were kind of there like, that is a very, very quick turnaround. Obviously, Jamie's just said, teams don't like rules to be changed mid-season. Depends on the team and depends on the rule, let's be fair. Because I'm sure, Red Bull perhaps, 2013, those tyre changes for the second half of the year, I think they quite liked that. Yeah, just dominated the second half of the year through OP tyres. I think there's quite often rules that teams do like in Formula 1. But yeah, I mean, obviously we got a few weeks off over the summer. I think it made more sense, didn't it? The teams, they probably need a bit of time to get it all sorted, ready for the second half of the campaign. So I think it's fair. I almost said completely rigged then, but we won't say that this week. Let's jump in then to the Austrian GP. The Styrian Hills, once more alive with the sound of V6 turbo hybrids. And immediately...
as well, I don't think that's a...
Oh, I don't think they're bad sounding still, after listening to them again at Silverstone.
Yeah, they're not bad. They're no V8s. But
no. Unfortunately, though, early on in the weekend, the hills were alive with the sound of Lando Norris not being happy and McLaren engines blowing up.
Yeah, I didn't catch practice at all, so you'll have to talk us through this one, unfortunately.
So basically just Lando, I don't actually know what the exact issue was actually in the end, but his seat, basically he said his seat was on fire, so he'd like to jump out of the car rather quickly as the engine slowly... It wasn't quite another engine failure later on in the weekend that we'll talk about during the show, but yeah, wasn't quite what McLaren needed at the start of what recovered in the end to be quite a decent weekend, but was really looking rather ropey throughout quite a lot of it, wasn't it? Especially around a track that Lando has often done really well at in the past.
Well, before this weekend, they had four of the last four Q3 sessions there. They'd got a car in the top four on the grid.
Yeah, and of course, remember, Lando got a podium in 2020 and in 2020. No, did he get a podium last year here as well?
Yeah, he did. It might have been Styria, but...
Yeah, in one of the Grand Prix. at Austria. I mean, when you consider the sprint race as well, we've now had 6 races at Austria in the last 3 years, which is kind of insane. But talking of teams that were looking strong, though, McLaren maybe in the past, Haas. Once again, Haas. They've still had no major upgrades. We kind of spoke at Silverstone that they brought some upgrades, but apparently they weren't as big as we'd originally anticipated. Haas are still looking mega when you consider how little they've done to the car.
They're very, very strange. I don't understand Haas. I don't think they quite know how to run themselves yet, because they've just not bought any upgrades since Bahrain, really, major upgrades, and they're still just smashing it.
Yeah.
Like, Austria's always been a track that they've done quite well on in the past. I think Grosjean got a 6th here in 2017.
2017 it was 6th, yeah, and 2018 was their
4-5
best result
in
ever.
2018, yeah. Yeah, so maybe it's just a track that they like, but either way, yeah, they were right there, front of the midfield again, which they haven't really been that quick since like Imola with Magnussen, but yeah, fair play.
Yeah, I mean, it was another solid weekend. I mean, you've said since Imola. Canada, they qualified really well. Let's not forget about that.
Yeah.
And then
but then their pace in the
Silverstone,
race was
they were a little way behind Alpine and McLaren, but certainly didn't do too badly. And I think as well, that goes to show, because there was one man this weekend who we always didn't see any of at all, and he was the dominant man in the midfield, Jamie, and you forgot to mention him there. So we'll definitely talk about him later on.
I actually forgot he came 5th.
Everyone has kind of forgot he existed basically all year, to be honest. But yeah, it's safe to say a certain Frenchman that isn't Pierre Gasly is lighting it up in the midfield at this stage of the campaign. Talking, though, of course, the end of practice, though, Max Verstappen fast ahead of Charles Leclerc and George Russell. We both kind of predicted last week, didn't we, that this would just be another Red Bull walkout. Oh, not a Red Bull walkout, sorry, a Max Verstappen walkout.
Yeah.
Because it has been so many times in the past.
Yeah, he got 2 Grand Slams out of 2 last year.
142 laps in a row led.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's won, 4 races at that track in the past?
Yes, 3 Austrian Grand Prix, 1 Styrian.
And 1 Styrian, yeah.
Because people got angry at me when I did my facts video at the end of
Well, I watched it and thought, I'm sure he's got more than 3.
Yeah, so... and I read it and thought he got more than 3, but of course, yeah, it is the Styrian Grand Prix, not the Austrian Grand Prix, so small differences, but you know, you got to be factually correct with this information, because let's be honest, Jamie, we both know how the internet works. If I'd said it was 3, people would complain that I didn't put 4. If I said it was 4, people would have gone, it's the Styrian Grand Prix, not the Austrian Grand Prix. It's a different race.
Technically, that's not the same.
Technically, it's different. So I was kind of damned if I did, damned if I didn't in that situation. But we're getting off topic. Let's get then into Friday night qualifying once again. It felt like a bit of a vibe, but...
Yeah.
Yep.
That's all I have to say.
That was all that Jamie had to say. Unfortunately, it wasn't such a vibe for Zhou Guanyu, was it? Who was the first driver with issues.
No, and I kind of thought this might happen because he's often struggled getting the car set up to quite his liking this season. So the tracks where he's done well, it's where he sets it up in FP1 and it immediately feels like he's good to go. Whereas, obviously, sprint weekends, you only get 1 session versus 2. So
about 3.
Yeah. Well, 1 before qualifying, I mean, sorry. So, yeah, I could kind of see it coming. And also, it's a completely brand new car because it all got totaled by George Russell in Silverstone. So, yeah, 17th on the grid wasn't great, but then it didn't matter anyway because, yeah, the car died before the race even started in the sprint. So, yeah, wherever he qualified, he would have been starting in the pit lane.
Yeah, it was not quite the most fun weekend down at Zhou Guanyu HQ, but I mean, yeah, he was joining Q1 with Daniel Ricciardo, both Aston Martins again. They're Seb last at the end of qualifying, got quite unlucky that his final run was taken away, but Ricciardo slower than Lando Norris, despite the fact Lando got about 10 minutes of running in free practice, which was kind of bad. And then further issues arose when Will Buxton at the end of the weekend said 2023 we won't have Daniel Ricciardo. Don't know if you saw that. Yeah, he accidentally said that. He did then clarify on Twitter he slipped up. But yeah, apparently...
Well, Colton Herta's testing in Mugello.
In last year's car, isn't he? Yeah, at Portimao.
Yeah.
I still think if it's going to be anyone, it'll go to Piastri.
Yeah, I think so as well.
But we'll talk about that at a later date. But yeah, both Canadians, Seb, Ricciardo and Zhou Guanyu out in Q1. Then, of course, we jump into Q2. Now, the big topic all weekend, wasn't it, Jamie, was track limits. And I mean, we'll have a bit more of a discussion about those later on. But things kind of got messy in Q2, didn't they? When Perez blatantly ran wide, got into Q3, and then after Q3 was moved back to the place he would have been in Q2.
Yeah, which is... I mean, in the end, it was quite like they did the right thing, but what they should have done is got it right in the first place.
This is what I couldn't understand. The lap should have been banned immediately, so then Perez could have then made it into Q3 because he would have done a clean lap that would have seen him into Q3.
No, but that was his last lap. That was
No, it was his second one, I thought. I thought there was one more lap after it. I thought the flag had gone. No, I didn't think so. I might be wrong. But I thought he did have time to go for another run. He just didn't need to because obviously that lap was fast enough.
Yeah, maybe. I don't actually know for sure. But yeah,
Richard.
And it also cost... he actually won. Well, he almost
No,
won
he didn't, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it also cost Gasly because he was 11th. And then
yes, yeah.
Could have got a shot at Q3 where obviously, one of the drivers in Q3 didn't set a lap time. So he would have been at least 9th, maybe a bit higher than that as well. So... Yeah,
I mean, it just... I mean, like we said, we'll discuss track limits a little bit later on in the show, but it was a bit of a disaster class, wasn't it, from Austria? But yeah, Gasly, Albon, Bottas, Yuki Tsunoda, and Lando Norris then, of course, out in Q2. Lando this time around reporting some braking issues, so not a fun weekend so far for Lando Norris by the end of Friday. Then we jump into Q3. Now, historically, this has not been a particularly great track for Mercedes ever. In the past.
Lewis Hamilton, particularly.
Or Lewis Hamilton, for that matter.
Because Rosberg and Bottas have been fairly good there in the past.
I wouldn't say so particularly.
Rosberg won 2 out of 3. Bottas won 2 races here.
Has Bottas won 2 here?
He won 2017, and he won...
Oh, yeah, he has, hasn't he?
2019.
Yeah, I suppose, actually. Yeah, it's just Hamilton's awful Austria. And Hamilton...
No, Bottas didn't win 2019. I was there. 2020.
2020 he won. Sorry, yeah, that was...
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the point, Mo. Unfortunately, as we got into Q3, though, Hamilton, pretty much immediately, on his first run, stacks it at turn 8.
Yeah, and it was... We don't see that very often for Lewis Hamilton, just binning it with no real reason, which... Yeah,
well, I think no real reason is a bit
Well, obviously
harsh.
he's pushing, but, sometimes he gets caught up in incidents and stuff, but, when he's just doing a lap and he crashes, that basically never happens. I think Brazil 2017 was probably the last time. Unless you're counting when he went off on the wet in Imola last year. But that kind of had circumstances to apply to it.
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah, bit surprising. He was very disappointed with himself. Obviously, cost him a good grid slot as well, because Mercedes looked like they could have had a chance of getting in amongst the top 4 as well. Or top 3, because Perez would have been removed later, I guess. So disappointing for Hamilton. But, yeah, he recovered in the race, so...
Yeah, and then, of course, George Russell, he spoke high praise of Lewis all year, saying he's learnt a lot from him. And then, unfortunately, learned how to stack it as well. Yeah,
and he even copied Lewis in the race too. So, yeah, we'll get onto that later on. But it was very, very similar to the 2015 qualifying session at Austria, where, again, the 2 Mercedes teammates, after the first runs, Hamilton was on pole, Rosberg second. Final runs come around, Hamilton bottles it at turn 1, goes off, and then Rosberg is improving and goes off at the final corner. So, yeah, very weird how this track just seems to go quite badly for Hamilton and Mercedes, but there we go.
Yeah, sometimes I guess you just get tracks like that. I mean, it's quite funny, isn't it, that we see a bad track for Hamilton when he's won here, twice?
Yeah.
One Austrian, one Styrian Grand
Twice
Prix.
For Hamilton is very
Twice for Hamilton is awful standards, which is kind of mad when you think about it. But yeah, that then meant that Max Verstappen did end up going fastest in Q3. Actually, a really good battle for pole position in the end, wasn't it? Charles Leclerc took pole. Sainz then went right behind him, and then Max just improved right at the end to dip into the 104s there. The only man to go into the 104s. But yeah, they were top 3 covered by 10th of a second. First time since Bahrain... what was it called again? The weird Sakir Outer Loop GP
that was what it was called.
Of 2020. Yeah, the first time top 3 have been separated by less than a tenth since then. Perez was P4, but of course that then didn't happen. With Russell, Ocon, K-Mag, Mick, Alonso, and then Lewis rounding out the top 10. So yeah, George Russell did quite lucky actually to get his lap in, and then no one behind him went quicker, because the likes of your Ocons could have been quite a difficult thing to get around this weekend, as we will discuss later on. Then we move to Saturday. It's sprint race time. Some people hate it. Some people love it. Fernando Alonso's team decided they were going to leave the tyres on. The tyre blankets on even, not the tyres. They did want to be on.
Yeah, and the car up on its jacks.
Yes. Now, everyone thought that was a stupid thing by Alpine, but they didn't do it on... Well, they did do it on purpose. It's because he had an electrical fault, and they knew if they left him on the grid, then he would be forced to retire immediately, wouldn't he? So they deliberately left the car on the jack so they could bring it back into the pit lane so then they could spend more time trying to fix it. And then it didn't go anywhere anyway.
Yeah, it was... Yeah, we all thought Alpine were being Alpine again, but it was fairly clever, maybe? I don't know.
It was a necessary evil.
Yes, yeah. So it wasn't just them being stupid, but yeah, it was a shame for Alonso. Qualified in the top 10, was it?
Yeah.
It was, 8th, I think.
It was 8th,
and also
after Perez.
he had floor damage in Q2, or he picked up damage in Q2. Otherwise, he could have been right there in the top 5, I think, because his pace through before that point in the weekend was very impressive. But shame for Alonso. Doesn't seem to have much luck this season, really. But yeah, sprint race was wiped off immediately, and he's in my fantasy team, so that was fun. Yeah, not great, but he made amends almost in the proper race. And then that caused that didn't cause an aborted start, but an aborted start was caused because another driver in my fantasy team broke down on the formation lap, which was very fun. Zhou Guanyu, as we mentioned, his car just turned off going around the final few corners. He managed to get going again, but obviously he dropped to the back, so had to then do the extra formation lap and pull into the pit lane and start from there. And never really gained much ground back in the sprint.
I mean, it did kind of make me chuckle, didn't it? The fact, he reported all these engine issues. Everyone else is lined up on the grid ready to go. They abort it, and then suddenly the engine kicks back into life.
Yeah.
But I mean, not fun for F1's now most and least experienced drivers on the grid there. Both of them with issues before things even got going. Then we did finally get to the start of the GP, and we'd already had carnage beforehand, and then we had even more by the time they got to turn 1.
Yeah, and it was, again, similar to the Silverstone crash, but obviously a lot lower speed, which was helpful. But it was 3 wide with Hamilton in the midfield. Gasly on the inside. I can't remember who was on the outside, actually.
Alex Albon.
Oh, Albon. Wow, Hamilton really messed up quali.
It was Albon nailed it, to be honest.
Yeah, he was like 12th, wasn't he, or something?
Yeah.
But yeah, Gasly pulled across. It wasn't the best move from Gasly, to be fair, but luckily there was no damage apart from to himself in terms of race time. So yeah, a bit unfortunate. Hamilton obviously doesn't really know how to drive in the midfield, so
I don't think Hamilton did anything wrong there.
I'm not pinning that on Hamilton at all.
I was going to say,
it's a shame.
He drove perfectly in that situation.
It feels like every time Hamilton starts in the midfield, people just drive into him. It feels like...
You kind of get this... Pierre's probably there going, Franz, you seen this? I'm racing Lewis!
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was... again, I think it's very, very difficult, wasn't it? Because obviously Gasly... Jamie didn't even know who was alongside Lewis there, so how Gasly's meant to know when he's in the car? Of course, Albon kind of just appears randomly, doesn't he, in Formula 1 race weekends. So, yeah, Gasly obviously tried to move over towards turn 1. Hamilton couldn't go any further to the left, so Gasly just kind of sent himself to the shadow realm into the first corner. Sainz, though, as well, because of Leclerc and Verstappen being so feisty into turn 1, jumps Leclerc pretty much immediately, and then they kind of just start battling out early on in the race, watching Verstappen drive off into the sunset for some reason, because Ferrari.
Yeah, it was a weird one from Ferrari to not intervene. I guess they want to let the drivers race, but it was entertaining, but it was clearly costing both Ferrari's time compared to Verstappen. So I think Sainz enjoyed the battle. I don't think Leclerc enjoyed it quite so much, but Leclerc did win out eventually, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I saw something on Twitter saying that apparently the Ferrari mechanics, the Ferrari pit wall told Leclerc to just push and, sort of keep it clean and tidy. And they were also telling Sainz at the same time to attack Leclerc.
Right.
Like, to go for moves. And they're like, that is ridiculous. And then you go, it's Ferrari. It's likely that therefore it's true. which is kind of mad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the sprint race, to be fair, I mean, we've often spoke praise. You know, sprint racing is kind of the thing to hate still, isn't it, in Formula 1? We've often spoke praise of it. This one wasn't bad by any means, but I think we've kind of, because Silverstone was so good and then the race had really good moments, we kind of forgot actually the sprint wasn't that amazing in comparison. The only real things we kind of had going on early on was, of course, Hamilton then stuck behind the Haas cars, and also Perez, after the nightmare end to Friday even, he was brilliant in the sprint. He kept things spicy.
Yeah, and we saw DRS trains emerge very quickly, but Perez was able to use the straight line speed at Red Bull to really just carve his way through it really quickly.
Like
so,
butter.
Yeah,
like a knife through butter, even, I should say. Butter doesn't tend to carve.
Knife even. Yeah, so Perez fairly swiftly made his way up to fifth, but then weirdly didn't catch Russell for the rest of the race, who was chilling in fourth. While, as you said, Hamilton was stuck behind Mick Schumacher, who was getting towed along by Magnussen, who was deliberately slowing down into the final sector to give Schumacher DRS for those first three straights. So it was very clever from Haas, but I'm not sure Hamilton was too pleased about the team play to almost screw him over. But eventually he got his man and finished 8th in the sprint. Hamilton got a point.
Yeah.
So could be worse.
Yeah, not bad by Hamilton in the end. We did also, because of that, see the Mick Schumacher revenge arc starting to form, didn't we?
Yeah.
He was not happy after the sprint because he felt he was quicker than K-Mag.
I don't know why he wasn't happy.
He felt he was quicker than K-Mag and they should have swapped him before Hamilton got to him, so then he could have scored a point and then K-Mag wouldn't have.
Yeah, but then if Schumacher was quicker, why did K-Mag keep having to slow down to give DRS?
And now that, Jamie, none of us know the answer to still.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
Mick was not happy, and we saw what happened when Michael used to not get happy in the F1 paddock, so I don't think anyone was going to tell him otherwise.
No,
Speaking of drivers not happy, though, Albon also spent a lot of the sprint making things interesting, didn't he? First of all, got a 5-second penalty for forcing Lando off the road in a move at Silverstone that would have been okay, but now again isn't, because FIA are consistent. We have seen some explanations. You know, there are plenty of different reasons as to why Albon did get a penalty here, but then drivers didn't at Silverstone.
I think I understand why.
It was basically because Lando was ahead, wasn't he, at the apex?
Yeah.
But it's all kind of a bit messy and complicated. And of course, what the real reason is because the FIA realised they need to start policing it again. Otherwise, they were screwed.
And they definitely were this weekend.
Yes, they would have had big issues otherwise. So, Albon got a 5-second penalty for that, and then in a fit of rage decided he'd just bin off Seb later on.
I mean, fair play to him.
Seb, literally got what Albon had to him a couple of years ago, just at a different corner.
Yeah, a couple of corners later. But I loved Albon's defence of both those incidents was, my car has no grip, I just understeer into people. Was basically what he was saying. Which,
that is quite good, isn't it? Just blame Williams.
That's the sort of thing we would say on a My Team career mode, where your car's trash, so you're like, oh no, I've understeered and forced him off.
And funnily enough, I think I had a video yesterday that went live where I said exactly that.
Yeah.
Yuki Tsunoda, I apologise once again.
Yeah, that was kind of all that happened in the sprint. There was a few more things. Like, we've definitely seen worse sprint races. But it wasn't that interesting, really. Verstappen won because the Ferraris were too busy tripping over each other in the start. From Leclerc and Sainz, with Russell P4, which is where he qualified, ahead of Perez, who recovered to 5th. Ocon, Magnussen, Hamilton scored the points, with Mick and Bottas finishing the top 10, although Bottas had engine penalties. And eventually changed the floor, I think, or the rear wing or something as well, so was in the pit lane for the start of the proper race.
Yeah, and it must also be said, mustn't it, that Leclerc was actually taking a fair chunk of time out of Max later on in the GP and was very confident come Sunday that they would have the pace. Charles Leclerc knew something. Probably knew he'd planted something on Sainz's car, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But of course, that then brought us to race day Sunday. Like Jamie said, Bottas, of course, was starting in the pit lane with some issues. It was obviously Seb was right at the back as well. Alonso was right at the back, so it was going to be a race of experience trying to carve their way back through the order, wasn't it? Talk me through the start.
Yeah, it was fairly standard up until, I mean, it was almost completely obvious what was going to happen into turn 5 or turn 4, sorry. But yeah, Verstappen just kept the lead into turn 1. No contact as far as I know into turn 1. And then you had, I think, Verstappen leading up the hill, quite comfortable. The Ferrari's right behind him. Russell tried to get past Sainz, didn't work into turn 3. That allowed Perez to have a chance on Russell. Tries going around the outside of turn 4. Literally into the braking zone, you just know it's going to end in tears. Like before the corner even started, like, yeah, there's a crash happening. And lo and behold, it did. Almost identical to the Hamilton and Albon crash from a couple of years ago that cost Albon his first win.
It didn't cost Albon his first win. I hate it when people say this.
Albon's car was going to break down.
That was the biggest miracle Albon and Red Bull could have ever hoped for that weekend, and I hate the agenda otherwise.
He was leading when his car broke down.
I hate this agenda that cost Albon a win when everyone forgets, including Red Bull and Albon themselves, that the car was going to break down on him anyway, and it did.
Yeah. So, but even so, I think it was a bit less cut and dry than that because the car at Perez on the outside had a bit more space to use if he wanted to.
And
so
it was a lot.
Russell a bit.
It was a lot earlier in the corner as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I felt a bit for Russell because he was squeezed, but also just slow down and don't take him out. But that was basically done for Perez. I got a bit of side pod damage. Spun out. Obviously, was last. They kept him out for a bit, but he had to retire because the pace just wasn't there at all.
No, the car was pretty undrivable from then on. But I think, it was safe to say, the Austrian Grand Prix kind of had some big flashes in the pan moments, didn't it? But a lot of it was fairly, 3 DRS zones in a row. I mean, it makes for good overtaking. I'd rather have it this way round than none of them. But kind of just meant a lot of moves were fairly easy to set up, weren't they? We did, though, see early on Mick Schumacher lap 4 re-jump Lewis, so Haas clearly were able to fire up their tyres really well. And
Hamilton made a mistake into 1, actually. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes,
but he went over the sausage curve on the outside, which he did in 2019 as well. I had to change the wing, and he did it in 2017, and I had to change the wing as well.
Possibly.
So I think definitely 19, maybe the other one's wrong. But yeah, either way, he's not very good at Turn 1 Austria.
Okay. Then of course, things got spicy up towards the front. After we all thought, this was just going to be the Max Verstappen show all weekend, Charles Leclerc went, and suddenly sent it on Max on just lap 12 and took the lead. And we really did just see a momentum shift.
Yeah, because you saw the few laps before that, Leclerc was chilling in DRS and wasn't close enough to make a move. Because he kept faking one to turn 3 inside and stuff, and then it wouldn't come off. But this time on lap 12, he just didn't. He stayed behind Max, and then that gave him, obviously, he can stay closer through the corner because he's on the right line. And then it sort of caught Verstappen unawares, which we don't see often from Max, but he was definitely caught napping, I think, into turn 4. Leclerc just went on the inside, and that was it. And then he just drove off. So, Red Bull didn't seem to have the pace that we expected, which is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to have one
we're
lap
both Red Bull
pace.
fans now. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm definitely not wearing a Ferrari hat this week. But yeah, I mean, it was a bit weird, wasn't it? Like we said, Red Bull clearly had 1 lap pace still, but just they could not get the tyres to work the way they wanted them to this weekend, or anywhere near the level that Ferrari could. I mean, apparently they had brought some upgrades which made the car heavier again, but that was just because obviously they were trying to experiment with some other bits and pieces. But yeah, just 2 laps later though, Max Verstappen jumps into the pit lane.
Yeah, and it was, again, a curious one from Red Bull. Obviously, they were kind of fighting a losing battle with 1v2 at the front, but we never really see teams, front-running teams, pit their driver into traffic, which is exactly what they did with Verstappen. Maybe they thought that all the traffic would just pit, but yeah, he got through it fairly fast.
Yeah.
But he was behind the likes of Ocon, Hamilton, Russell, all of the midfield. I think he came out in 8th place.
He definitely wasn't behind Russell because Russell was at the back by this point.
Russell was at the last. Yeah, I forgot about that. And he got a 5-second penalty, which we also forgot to mention, for taking out Perez.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, Verstappen carved through the traffic fairly quickly, but it wasn't an ideal undercut, to say the least.
No, I mean, it was a bit strange. But to be honest, I don't think Red Bull had any other choice. I think Max kind of just told him, I'm pitting now, you better service me.
Yeah,
because
maybe.
I just don't think, like I said, the tyres were working for him. But I think the most impressive thing out of it was the fact that Ferrari didn't panic and immediately box as well.
Yeah, Ferrari really took control of the race at that stage because they knew what the fastest strategy was, and it was to go a bit further in on the first set of mediums. So that's exactly what they did. And for once, the Ferrari strategy didn't screw Leclerc over. So there we go.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of weird, wasn't it, to sort of see Ferrari not only make a good strategy choice, but actually be confident in it as well. And just, play their own race, knew they had pace in the bag. But then, we probably got to the wildest moment of the race, didn't we, Jamie? Lap 24, things got... Let's go pod racing, I think is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, we had Alonso stuck behind Joe.
Yep.
I think Alonso had just pitted, or maybe he hadn't.
I don't think either of them had yet.
No, Joe definitely hadn't. I don't think Alonso had either. But Alonso was like buzzing all over his back end into the final sector, like trying to fake one to the inside of the second last corner, which was interesting. But that, put Joe offline into turn one. Magnussen seizes the chance on Alonso and goes for it on Alonso, while Alonso's also sending it on Joe. Somehow they don't come together in turn one, with 3 wide momentarily. Joe switches back Alonso. Magnussen's taken both of them. And then you've got Norris and Schumacher involved as well. So it was suddenly 5 cars. Joe was like, I don't want another DNF, so bailed out and also had no DRS. So unfortunately went backwards 4 places in the space of 4 corners, or I guess 2 corners really. Well, I think it was Magnussen stayed ahead of all of them, but Norris went from the back of that pack to the very front momentarily, and then Magnussen got him back into turn 4. But it was great racing for the midfield, and to be fair, all race long, the midfield was kind of crazy. Like, it was so difficult to follow what was going on because there's so many different strategies, but there was always something going on in the race, which is always what you want.
Yeah, no, exactly. It is brilliant to see, isn't it, still? I've vocalised this so many times this year. This has probably been one of the best F1 seasons in living memory when you look at how much is going on in the midfield and just how close it is. It is absolutely fantastic. But yeah, absolutely love it. And like we said, a lot of different stuff going on in the midfield. And nice to see, that still pretty much every team every week has got a chance to fight for points. But, of course, most people just want to focus on the battle going on at the front. And that was, of course, lap 27. Charles Leclerc pretty much doubles the stint length of Max Verstappen. Finally boxes.
And he went on to do the same... It was basically the same strategy, but just offset by that first...
By 13 laps extra,
yeah. Which is quite a lot of laps. But yeah, it was fairly obvious that he was just going to catch and pass Verstappen fairly fast. Like... I never really had my hopes up when he came out like 5 seconds behind on 13 lap pressure tyres. And he caught him and passed him very quickly. I think Max was clever enough to realise that there wasn't much point fighting and ruining in what's left of his tyres, trying to hold off Leclerc, especially with Sainz right there as well, who pit a lap later and was going to be doing the same thing. So...
Yeah, no, exactly. It just was not a race that I think Max Verstappen learned quite quickly. It was better to think of the bigger picture this weekend there because, lap 37, he boxed again and then he was on another set of hards to try and see him through to the end of the GP. Then lap 40, after all his disappointment on Saturday, Sebastian Vettel gets binned off again. You cannot write it. This time round, it was by Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, and Gasly didn't have a very fun weekend. That was another 5-second penalty handed out in the race. Basically the same classic turn 4 crash, just one car trying to go on the outside of another car. The inside car understeers and tips the other one into a spin.
But this one, I think was by far and away the most optimistic attempt, wasn't it? Including Hamilton's in 2019. Gasly
should have just bailed out.
I think Gasly was barely going to get the car slowed down into the corner by himself, never mind with poor Seb being there on the outside.
No. Not a great weekend for either. I think Seb got quite unlucky, but also qualified 20th, so can't really complain.
No, exactly. Not a weekend to remember for Sebastian Vettel or Pierre Gasly there. Lap 50, though, of course, we have still got a few things going on in the midfield, but nothing too dramatic at the moment, of course. Lap 50, Charles Leclerc pits in again. You know, he's just been comfortable, at the front of the field there. So he's just going to box, to cover off Max Verstappen once more. And it only took him 3 laps this time round before he's flown back past Max into the lead. And I guess the real question from there was, of course, was Sainz going to get close enough and actually have the pace and skill to jump Max Verstappen? But of course, that didn't happen.
Yeah, unfortunately for Sainz, the race winner of the previous Grand Prix, caught up to the back of Max Verstappen. Looked like he maybe had a chance into turn 4 on the very lap it happened, but then his engine completely blew up. Another Ferrari power unit problem, and he was out the race on the spot, and also couldn't get out because the cars obviously have no handbrake, and he parked it on a hill. So
and the marshals were useless.
The marshal. Did you see the marshal who
ran
put
over a fire extinguisher and then ran off?
And then walked off.
Oh, like,
very, very amusing.
Not great. Not great.
But yeah, Sainz. Are we counting that as a gravel trap visit? It's been a while for Carlos.
I don't ever think he actually went on the gravel trap.
No, it was an escape road alongside of a gravel trap. But yeah, he did his best to go and find.
I think he tried to do the best he could there and had a pretty solid weekend up to that point, wasn't it? And can we just say as well, Ferrari know how to make an engine blow up still. That was incredible.
That was very impressive.
The fact the engine pretty much ripped apart the chassis around it was a proper old school. Like, we need more V10-esque blow-ups again. I can't remember.
Like 3 times a race, someone just blows up and there's a massive plume of
I'm not saying 3 times a race. But I'm saying
that's what it used to be.
The big plumes of smoke, everything like that. I can't remember which F2 driver it was last year that had one at Monaco. And it's like, imagine waking up in your Monaco high-rise as there's smoke everywhere, and someone goes, "Oh yeah, some Formula 2 drivers absolutely blown their engine to pieces." That's what you want.
The Kimi Raikkonen. We could have more Belgium. I think it was definitely the V10 era, 2005-ish.
Yeah,
there's a massive plume of smoke at the top of Eau Rouge, and Raikkonen just full flat goes through it at full speed.
That bit you can kip, to be honest. Yeah. But I mean, even Raikkonen's at Monaco all those years ago. You need big engine blow-ups in Formula 1. That's what they're there for. But unfortunately, though, that was basically the last thing that happened, though, in the Grand Prix, wasn't it, Jamie?
There are a few little things that happened that we've just forgotten about, or that weren't in the race highlights. I quite enjoyed Alonso. Fernando Alonso obviously starting basically last after the problem in the sprint race. Came back, was running 5th for a bit.
Yes, sorry.
And he had to pit twice in 2 laps. Otherwise, he could have finished top 8 quite easily, maybe top 6, with his teammate Ocon, who finished 5th in the end. But had to pit twice in 2 laps, which kind of screwed him because it had a massive vibration on one of the sets of tyres. And also I very much enjoyed his overtake on Yuki Tsunoda, where literally, as he was overtaking him, he wagged a finger because Tsunoda had just put him on the grass on the entry to turn, or the exit of turn 3. Alonso very much the elder statesman of the grid, putting the numbers on the young man, Yuki. But there we go.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of very, very big highlights there, wasn't it? But yeah, I guess the last thing that really happened was, of course, after Sainz's issue, Leclerc then started reporting issues with the throttling. They're like, Ferrari can't surely throw this away.
Yeah.
But luckily, for Ferrari, Charles Leclerc did come through for the race victory ahead of Max Verstappen there. Lewis Hamilton, 3rd podium in a row this weekend. Absolutely fantastic display by him ahead of George Ocon. This was someone we needed to mention. Ocon this weekend ran the best race that no one's ever seen. We didn't see anything from him all weekend.
It was only him getting passed by George right at the end. But it was a very good, very smooth weekend from Ocon. He's been doing it all year, really. He's barely been out the points.
He's mega this year. I think Alonso
has been very, very unlucky. Otherwise, the points gap would be a lot smaller. But fair play, you can only do what you get handed. So Ocon's doing really well, which annoys me because I don't like him very much.
No, I know you don't. It's because you're a big Gasly fan. But I mean, Ocon, he's ahead of his 2-time, far more experienced world champion teammate. He's got a multi-year deal in place, and he's just quietly picking up a P5 out of nowhere, and no one's really caring. He's living the dream right now in the Formula One midfield. And yeah, we spoke the high praises of Haas all weekend, but Ocon in that Alpine was by far and away the best midfielder. They were clear with that car.
It is a very interesting constructors battle as well, between, well, basically everyone down from the top three, because you got, well, right now McLaren are fourth, but I think it's fair to say Alpine definitely have a faster car right now.
It's basically just carried by Lando.
Yeah, so you got McLaren fourth, Alpine fifth, Alfa Romeo are currently sixth, with Haas close behind, and AlphaTauri. So all of those will be really interesting to see how it plays out, because obviously a lot of those teams are quite small, so need the budget of finishing as high as possible.
Yeah, I know.
So one to watch through the season for sure.
And I mean, I found it. Let me just try and dig up an interesting stat I uncovered yesterday, Jamie. Over the last 2 race weekends. So.
Oh, Haas have outscored everyone, haven't they?
Haas have outscored in the last 2 race weekends. Williams, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin, and McLaren all together.
Yeah.
19 points for Haas, 18 points for all of those other teams is kind of mad. Also goes to show at the moment the fact it's basically the big 6 Alpine and Haas that are scoring.
Well, in the last 2 races, yeah. I think Alfa and McLaren will get back there in a good race weekend for them. But, yeah, those other 5 teams are doing a very good job at the minute.
Exactly. Let's get on then, Jamie. Driver of the day. I think there's a few people to shout out here, isn't there?
Yeah, obviously Leclerc won his first ever race from not pole.
Yep. Good job by him.
Yeah, I think shout out to the driver of the day. I would mention Mick Schumacher. I think he might actually be my proper one.
Yeah, he had another good weekend.
Because he is. I mean, we've disrespected Mick Schumacher a lot, deservedly so, for the first half of the season. But yeah, maybe it's time to put some respect on his name.
Mick Schumacher is doing the Mick Schumacher, and second half of his second year in a season, and he's just suddenly decided now he's going to upset Dan Ticktum again.
Yeah, best race in Formula One for him in terms of finishing.
Yes, yeah, best result.
I think
ever.
Alonso. It's a shame that he had that double pit stop, because without he could have been.
He would have probably been a very good shout for driver of the day. Looking through elsewhere though, George Russell, fantastic recovery. Hamilton as well, another podium despite the issues on Friday and Saturday. Ocon as well, like we just said, we can't sing enough of Ocon's praises there. The only other car not to end up a lap down outside of the big 3, so did very, very good job done by him. Albon as well was running in the points for a huge part of the afternoon, and just then got pushed out right at the very end there, which was probably heartbreaking for him. But I mean, kind of mad as well when you think there were only 5 cars on the lead lap at the end, but no one finished more than a lap down. Sebastian Vettel in last there was still only 1 lap down.
Yeah, I guess, is that kind of mad? I don't know, because it's a minute and 10 lap, give or take.
But that's what's kind of mad about it, the fact that...
But, yeah, so everyone is more than 70 seconds off the winner, but less than 140 seconds.
Yeah.
Is that mad?
I think that's mad. I think that's pretty mad when you think about it. It's not often that we end up... Because obviously everyone kind of looked at it and goes, oh, well, clearly the big 3 is still rapid then. But obviously Austria is such a short track and there's so many laps to catch up. Of course you're going to get lapped more often around a track like this. But the fact, that everyone only got lapped once, I think is quite impressive. I mean, Latifi would have probably been lapped more, but he retired. But I think, a lot of different people there that a deserved shout-out for driver of the day. But I think, Mick Schumacher... probably the one that deserved it most in the end. Yeah,
and he got the official one as well.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Yeah, brilliant.
Real
brilliant
quick,
weekend.
I know it's not in the notes, but I'm going to spring some trivia on you.
Okay.
Like the actual trivia section.
Okay.
So
I'm going to guess it's related then to driver of the day.
It's not actually, but it's related to another thing that happened, which was Max Verstappen has overtaken Valtteri Bottas in the all-time podium list.
Oh no!
So Verstappen has now gone. Verstappen's now gone up to 9th in the all-time list of podiums, while Bottas is 10th.
Okay.
All I want you to do is name the top 8.
Oh, Lord.
And you have 30 seconds.
No, 1 minute. Come on.
Okay, 1 minute, and I'll start the time. And there's obviously 8 more to get.
So I need 8.
Yeah, and you're going to start in 3, 2, 1 now.
Lewis, Michael, Sebastian, Fernando Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen, Alain Prost, Ayrton
Yep.
Senna.
Yep.
Is that 7?
You've only got one more.
Rubens Barrichello.
Yeah. Oh, you actually smashed it out in 17 seconds.
Get in there. I'm happy with
I
that.
thought that'd be harder. I thought you were going to miss Rubens, but fair play.
No, Rubens was kind of like my, if I'm struggling towards the end, just guess. I'll take that.
Yeah, so very well. Max Verstappen is level with Barrichello actually on 68.
One more
you almost did you did top 3 in order.
I was, just trying to go through at the most wins, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I thought if they've only got
60
60 odd, pretty much, well, everyone, well, even up to Prost, wasn't he? He had 50 wins, didn't he?
Yeah.
So I think surely they would have got 18 podiums.
Yeah. Yeah. So there we go. Top 10 of all time podiums for Max Verstappen and Valtteri Bottas, which I think is more surprising.
I mean, I've
67 podiums and 10 wins.
I think the most impressive thing about that, Jamie, is the fact that I got all of them.
Yeah, so fast as well. I told you 30 seconds would have been. You could have done that easily. Well, you did.
Well, you could have given me 18 seconds and I would have done it.
Yeah.
So we'll take that. We'll absolutely take that. Speaking of things then that we will absolutely take, let's go over, Jamie. It's time for our F1 fantasy recap.
Yes. I have to apologise if there is severe and continuous error in my judgment because this was not the final opportunity to play a Mega Driver. But to be fair, my advice got everyone a lot of points. So if you listen to me, then well done. You probably megaed Max or Leclerc and got lots of points. But yes, the gap is actually at the summer break, which is a bit stupid since in the rules it says halfway through the season, which is now. But we'll gloss over that. But yeah, fair play.
You'd never
Mega Drivered Max.
Yeah, you'd never guess Jamie Sweat's fantasy things, would you? That he's like one of 6 people that read through the rules, rather than the rest of us making a team at the start of the year and then basically never changing it. And we're going to change it up as well for now. We're going to shout out the top 30 each week.
Oh, are we? Here we go. Matt plays a Mega Driver and suddenly thinks he's big.
I'm just saying I nailed this week. How many points did you score, Mr. 183?
Oh, I've just gone off it. Hang on. I scored with no Mega Driver because I played it in Baku. I scored 280.
That's pretty poor.
Which is very good with no Mega Driver.
I would argue it's not. Actually, no, I'd argue that's still really good going, to be honest. I'm sort of looking
that's probably my highest score of the season.
Yeah, I think you would
Apart
have...
from the Mega
280 was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so even if you had Mega Drive, I think you would have scored about 3 less than me this week.
Yeah, I should check that. I still would have lost to you if I'd Megaed Max, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
How many then? Let us all know.
Well,
Mega Drive for Verstappen.
387 points.
Ridiculous.
387!
I would have got one less if I Megaed Max, actually.
And you didn't! So I smashed you this week.
But my Mega Driver did get me one more point. So there we go.
Oh well.
Verstappen got 54 points in Baku.
But I still smashed it this weekend with 387 points. And I mean, the rest of my team was lethal as well. Mega Drive, I think, to be honest, Mega Driver and Max was still the way to go this weekend because, of course, Leclerc as your turbo still scored mega points. Then I had George Russell, who on lap 5 I thought, well, this is over, but did a fantastic recovery to finish off with 35 points still. Alpine is my team there. Ocon carried that and Alonso got robbed towards the end. I could have probably got 400 points had things gone the right way for a lot of my drivers then. Albon, like I said, almost scored points. The only reason I know that was because I was watching him all day long on my fantasy league. And then Kevin Magnussen as well, another solid weekend for the K-Mag. So yeah, 387 points. I will take that. And it then means, out of our league now of nearly 4,500 people, we're both back inside the top 1,000. We're both back inside the top 750, I think, Jamie.
I'm well in the 750, yeah.
What position are you in?
I am 575th.
How many points have you got?
Oh, it's at the bottom there. 2,036.
So I'm 30 points behind you. And 570th, you say?
Yeah, 575.
I'm 160 places behind you.
That's pretty packed.
We are.
I mean, it will just be an
league.
all distribution, to be fair.
Yeah, that is kind of mad.
Yeah, but I think we're quite a long way off the top, to be fair.
We certainly are. Are you going to give us a rundown of this week's results, or do you want me to do this week's and you'll do the overall?
I'll do Austria because, yeah, it was a very good week generally in fantasy. All the drivers that everyone owns did quite well.
I mean,
so
there's so many. Everyone listened to you and used their Mega driver this week.
I know.
Everyone inside the top 80 used a Mega.
I'm aware of the effect that I have on F1 fans. But we have Hubert K from Poland on 409, which I think is probably the highest score we've seen all season.
Gotta be right up
certainly up there. With, Mega, Max, Turbo, Leclerc. Is that the same team as you? Ocon, Magnussen,
Not
Albon.
quite.
And then Ferrari is his team.
Not quite the same as mine. Obviously, he's got Ocon instead of George, and then Ferrari instead of Alpine.
That's the way to go. Get your team changed to that. We've got then Jonah B tied with Shady H in second and third. I'm guessing very similar teams, but Bottas instead of Ocon for both. Bottas instead of Albon, sorry, for both of those. We got Peter, the Greek, in fourth, tied with Alexia and Petros, or another Greek tied in fourth place with Giga Kubica, a Polish driver, in seventh, tied with Valeric, Adam P, and Floris, rounding out the top 10, all on 398 or more, which is ridiculous.
400 points to get you inside the top 10 is kind of insane at this stage
and Matt
of the
was
year.
10 points off.
10 points off a shout-out.
What were you on?
387.
Yeah, so you were 11 points off of a shout-out on your own podcast.
On my own podcast. And I mean, to be fair, loads of people are tied P18 as well, just in front of me. Yeah. So had I scored 4 more points, I would have been tied 18th at the end of this week. Yeah. Which is kind of mad. And weirdly enough...
Down to earth next week, don't worry.
Yeah. So many people tied. I was only tied with one other person, and that was another Greek guy.
Well, your team's very strange, isn't it?
Yeah, my team is very strange. Who had a completely different team to me as well, which is kind of mad. Let's give you guys a rundown then overall, because now, of course, Jamie's scared everyone into using their Mega Driver.
And everyone has, basically.
It now means that Max T, Mansel's mustache, is absolutely destroying everyone. He's now 171 points clear of Tim.
He came 55th in Austria, by the way.
What, whilst using his Mega?
Yeah.
How is he so good yet so mediocre all at the same time?
Well, he had Latifi and Vettel.
That's a bit of an L.
And he's still winning everyone. Wow.
He's still destroying everyone this year there. 2,514 points. Where would that rank him globally, Jamie?
I will have a research while you keep on
going. I will keep rattling through scores then. Tim, still in P2 there. Unfortunately, lost his top spot. We always knew he would once Max used his Mega. Bryce in P3 ahead of Larry, who dominated the early stages of the year. Carlos in P5 still ahead of a trio of Indians. Dipam, Taby. Actually, Taby's got 2 teams there in 7th and 8th place. With Alam Britis in P9 there, with Ren and R rounding out the top 10. So you'd need 2,270 points currently if you'd want to make it into the top 10 of our league. Where would 2,514 points place you overall, Mr. 183?
Out of 1.5 million people in the global league, Mansel's mustache is first by 60 points.
What? Fair play. That's a round of applause.
Actually, no, this has got to be wrong. Wait, the ranking's messed up.
The ranking will be glitched.
Apparently the guy in 4th has 1,900 points and the guy in 5th has 2,400.
Okay, so we don't quite know where Max is.
We don't know quite where he would, but it says on my list right here that he's first.
Okay, fair play to him. It normally the fantasy league only recovers on about Wednesday.
It does say rank 1 when you click on him, so maybe he is first. Fair play.
Maybe he is still. We don't quite know, because it often archives who's in other leagues first, so you can sort of see them as well. But, I mean, fair play, Max, if you are leading overall and you've got a spare ticket you want to invite me out to, or if you don't want either of them, I can bring Jamie, I suppose, as well. But fair play, if you are leading overall, mate, you are absolutely slapping that at this stage of the year. Do we jump then, Jamie, into our prediction recap? Can we remember what we predicted? I think we both predicted a Max domination, didn't we?
Yeah, so we both predicted a Verstappen pole. No, we didn't. You predicted Leclerc pole.
I predicted Leclerc pole, so that's immediately...
Which didn't happen.
Yep.
So there's 2 points to me.
Yeah.
We both predicted a Verstappen sprint win, which did happen.
2 points to both of us.
Yep, 4-2 to me overall so far. And then you went for a Verstappen Leclerc Perez, I believe.
Yep, so 2 more points for me. Brought me up to 4
Yep.
overall.
I went for a Verstappen Perez Sainz, which got
So
2
only
DNFs.
2 points for you. Only 1
only
point
2
for
for
you,
me.
sorry.
Oh yeah, 1 point. Oh no.
So you only gained 1 point this week. Which
But given that I'm already 12 ahead.
Let me just see how this affects the scores on the doors.
So I was on 40 and you were on 28.
And you're now on 45 against me on 32.
Yes. So my gap has extended, much like Max Verstappen's championship lead has also extended this weekend.
Yep. Fair play to Jamie183.
And yeah, we'll leave our France predictions until next podcast next week.
Yes, we will.
Slapping it. So I have the predictions, you have the fantasy. Even though I'm beating you in that.
You're beating me on fantasy still, but yeah, we won't talk about that at the moment. I guess sadly, there's only really one other thing that we have to talk about this weekend, isn't there, Jamie?
No, I think there's 2 more things. One of them's track limits.
Oh yes, sorry. There's a couple more things. Sadly, most of what we have to talk about to end the show this week are unfortunately negatives. Before we do those, though, let's give it a race rating out of 10. Silverstone was a solid 9.5. For me,
Yes.
Austria was an 8.5.
I didn't think it was as good as that. Maybe I'm being harsh.
I think everyone's being harsh because last week was
we
so
got
good.
treated at Silverstone. I will go for a 7.
A 7? There were cars almost 5 wide.
Yeah, one lap. Like that doesn't make a race. I don't know. Okay. It wasn't that intriguing in the front battle because I can't after the first stops. You can't know what's going to happen.
I feel like I might focus too much on the midfield and everyone else focuses too much on the race lead.
Maybe.
So I guess we'll discuss that. Sadly, though, unfortunately, the whole weekend was kind of overshadowed, wasn't it, Jamie? With some fans just taking things a bit too far.
Yeah, and F1 had to release a statement on Sunday morning. Fans acting in very, very embarrassing ways, racially abusing people in the paddock. Just generally being very, very stupid. I don't know what action they actually took in the paddock in terms of they could have kicked them out or make arrests and stuff. I
thought it was just around the event, not in the paddock specifically.
Not in the paddock, sorry. Yes, in the event, as in fans there. So a very big shame. I don't know. From races I've been to, there isn't there's obviously security around, but there's no police or anything. So
No.
I don't quite know how they're going to solve that. I think then just tell fans to not be stupid.
Yeah, I think we probably might see changes, won't we, over the next few years? Especially, it's very, very difficult, isn't it, to sort of point blame in one direction or another, isn't it, in these situations? But it's generally small groups of different fan bases, and I can also completely understand, there's probably a lot of people there going, this is 2 white men complaining about racism and sexism that they're not included in. We obviously, like any sensible person, we are both completely against it and can also completely understand that we won't be exposed to a lot of the negatives around it in Formula 1.
So it makes it more difficult for us to speak into it because...
It is, very, very difficult, of course, for us to sort of... we can only sort of say, it's very, very bad and we completely are against it, just like everyone else. But it is still, unfortunately, it's not something we get exposed to on Grand Prix. Or at least we haven't ever been exposed to it before at Grand Prix weekends. And obviously, we hope that continues. But obviously, F1 is an inclusive sport. It always should be. And we always hope it will continue to be in the future. So, if you're someone that might struggle to control themselves, if you've had a few too many to drink, it's very simple. Don't drink so much. Have a fun weekend, by all means. But don't ruin it for someone else because it is frustrating and it does... Well, not frustrating, it's just abhorrent. And puts a bad light on the sport as well. So, if you know people around you as well that might be like that, please speak up to them because, this issue, we've just said, it's not an issue that affects us personally. Doesn't mean by any means that we can sort of try and bat an eyelid or look away from it either.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And not what you want from a Formula 1 race weekend.
Not at all.
No. Let's talk about the other thing we don't want from a Formula 1 race weekend is the confusion over penalties. It kind of got a bit ridiculous this weekend, didn't it, Jamie?
It did, but I think from what I've seen, everyone with any sense at least is fairly happy that they're clamping down.
Yes, completely. This is the weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I do think it, especially in the F2 race, it was slightly ridiculous at sometimes because those drivers were going off a bit more. But basically the rule was, as far as I understood, you can get 3 lap times deleted, which means you've gone off once. So basically 3 warnings. Then the 4th warning, you get a black and white flag.
4th warning is a last chance.
Yeah. And then the 5th time, you get a 5-second penalty and a penalty point.
Yes.
Which is, yeah. And then the 6th time, you would then get another 5-second penalty.
Yeah.
So it's just penalties every time after that, which in F2 was a bit.
I mean, it's almost
chaotic.
cost Ollie Caldwell his F2 career.
Because he's on, he got one 5-second penalty, which got him up to 10 penalty points for the year.
I thought he was on to 11 now, yeah.
No, because the second time round it was a 2 penalty points.
Oh,
so
was
it? Got harsher.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So he was 1 corner cut away from getting suspended.
Which is, I mean, the penalties in the race I completely agree with. The off-track penalties when you're running a foot out of the white line, I feel is a bit too extreme. You know, if you're running half a foot over a white line, somewhere like that, are you really a danger on the circuit? Should you be getting a race ban? You know,
I don't think the penalty points are there. Like, that doesn't really make. I don't think they should be there. Sorry, because it's not dangerous driving. It's just either a mistake or you trying to drive fast, and you shouldn't be getting points on your license for that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult matter, isn't it? On that hand. On the other hand, though, I completely do think it's fair. You know, everyone was told before the weekend these were the rules, and it was policed fairly when you exclude Perez and then re-include Perez again later on. That's where things got a bit confusing. I am completely for, as long as they're consistent, penalties and warnings being dished out like this.
Yeah, I think there could be a slight bit more leniency if you can demonstrate you lost time.
Yes.
Which I think Norris complained of afterwards. He got a 5-second penalty late on.
And I think Lewis did as well, didn't he?
I didn't see that one. But Norris would have been 6th, but got a penalty for going wide at turn 1, where he definitely lost time, but still got the penalty, which I feel a bit for him. But yeah, I think if you can demonstrate, if you lift off afterwards, or if you've definitely lost time by just making a mistake or something, then maybe not get a warning for that. It's almost like F1 game that we've played for years.
Yes, yeah, it is quite funny.
I used to go off all the time and then lift off, and I never got warnings.
No, exactly. I mean, it is quite funny, isn't it? Sort of seeing the F1 drivers complain about something we've had to put up with in the game for years at this point. Never forget when strict corner got put in back on F1 2015.
Amazing.
But yeah, I mean, like we said, as long as they're consistent with it, I don't personally see an issue with it. But yeah, maybe it'll teach them to stay between the white lines from now on.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
France coming up, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wait and see when we get back to Le Castellet. Is there anything else to add, though, Jamie, before we both melt completely in our seats?
I think that about wraps us up.
I think we've done a pretty good job this week.
I need to go and open a window.
Fair enough. We'll wrap it up there then. Thank you all to everyone that has once again listened to the show. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure, if you're listening on Spotify, you give us a follow. Make sure you subscribe down below as well. And we will return, like we said, next week then, ready for the French Grand Prix preview.